Hi, I'm Pat McGibbon. I'm here to start off our Leadership Viewpoint series, and I want to welcome you to a great morning. In this series, we'll be bringing manufacturing icons for a candid discussion on their path to success, viewpoints on the industry issues, and a little insight into their drivers, and a look at where they think manufacturing is heading. Now, the first episode, we're with Jim King, President and COO of Okuma America Corporation. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good. This is I love this new platform, and I'm excited about seeing where we can go with it.
I agree with you.
So let's start off by talking about a little bit how you got to where you're at, from where you started with, why you went into engineering at Michigan State, and how that got you to this path at Okuma.
Yeah. When I started my career, I always had a goal that I wanted to be the president of a company. And if you ask my wife of 38 years, she'd say that I was in a witness protection program because about every 2 years we moved, all trying to get to the position that I am in today. And started with Allen Bradley, now Rockwell Automation. My background is such that it was all industrial control, PLCs, CNCs, and I was selling CNCs in the Connecticut Valley to companies like New Britain Machine, Jones and Lamson. Those names might be familiar to many of us. And then really from there, got a bug on the .com or .bomb, as I like to call it, because we spent a lot of money and went bankrupt. And if I had to do it all again, I'd do it again, because just the lessons learned of doing that. And then this industry of manufacturing really continues to pull you back in no matter where you go. And I had the opportunity to go to Siemens for a while, Nematron, back to PC-based CNCs, and it just continues to pull you back into manufacturing. And then Larry Schwartz contacted me and met this wonderful team of executives and people at Okuma, and they pulled me back into it. And I like to tell people, you come into the front door of a machine tool job shop or a machine tool company, and the first thing that hits you is that wonderful smell of coolant. And I'll tell you, I think it rewires your synapses that you can't get away from this industry. And so that's just a kind of a quick history of where I started and where I'm ending up as the head of Okuma.
Well, yeah, I mean, you touched on something I was going to ask about, and that is it's amazing how this industry and manufacturing as a whole sucks people in and just never lets go of them. What is it, do you think, besides the cool smell of coolant burning on the floor?
Well,
what do you think that brings us so close and won't let us go from the industry?
I believe that when you start to see how things are made, and I don't care if it's from chocolate to some complex pieces of art that we as an industry produce, when you start seeing how things are made, and you see how the people that make those parts, their creativity, the entrepreneurship that you get out of the people that we do business with every day, having the ability to understand how things is made, I think, just is one of those intellectual things that pull us into this thing called manufacturing. And my kids and I used to play a game, how's this made? And I'll tell you, having the ability to know how things are made, I think, is what drives many of us in this industry.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've always been into those engineering shows. I thought I was going to be an engineer, but I had some cultural things that pushed me in a different direction. But I still got into manufacturing, and it's that love of the game and seeing things actually made.
I agree with you.
And you and I won't mention any numbers because you and I graduated from college the same year, and so I'd be giving away two of us. But you've been in this industry for quite a while, and so you've seen some rough times and some good times. What do you think is the most difficult challenge you've faced over the course of the several decades you've been in this business?
I think people would expect me to say something like 2008, 2009 financial crisis, or what we're in right now is COVID-19. But I'd drive it all the way back to the days where a lot of us left our industry to go into the dot-com industry. And we all took these big bets of getting rich quick, IPOs, and setting that all up. And we set up a business. We spent over 70 million, and it really created a B2B exchange for the electrical wholesale business. And then we had to dismantle it. And for anybody that's had left an industry, gone into a different industry, and then you're up without a job. And probably the most difficult thing was seeing my friends and everybody else go through this transition of restarting your career. And so after the Source Alliance collapse, many of us had to restart our careers. And I tell you, restarting is a tough thing to do. And it all prepared me for what I'm doing today. But it was it was probably the most difficult thing that I had to deal with.
Yes, I've heard that a similar story from a number of other people. It's not necessarily just the .com, but other people that that have the agony of going and seeing something dissipate and become almost nothing, and have to rebuild from practically nothing.
Right.
And I'm sure you can attribute some of that to your partner.
Yes. Oh yeah. I have a wife that drives me like nobody's business, and and she actually has a almost as better golf game than I have.
Well, so that's the toughest part. But as you're coming through, you've had a number of different successes. You've had some a number of different awards that have come your direction. What would you say was probably the most fulfilling moment in your career so far?
So far, when I joined Akuma, we had a mission statement that you'd have to have a PhD to understand or even recite. And so as a team, we went out and really looked at the marketplace and how we were perceived by the marketplace, our customers, distributors, and our employees. And what we came up with was a very simple mission statement: is we passionately pursue a customer for life. Our values are centered around leading with a servant heart, commitment to quality, making it fun, and a commitment to quality. And those values have manifest themselves in 2016 IMTS Chicago, when customers, during the booth experience they had with us, I had many customers tell me, they say, something's different about your company. And in the pride that I felt from our employees to live that mission, vision, and value, it's one of the highlights of my career to see that an organization rallying around the customer is I got to say, as a leader, one of those things that you look back on and say, okay, we hit a home run there, and that the organization is set up to really take care of customers in a very meaningful way.
Well, that's you touched on something there about keeping the customer for life, and I understand you have a kind of interesting way of approaching customers when you go in with your distributors to take a look at what's going on in the shops.
Yeah. I rarely ever introduce myself as the president and COO of Akuma. I usually go into a room and just say, I'm Jim King and I work at Akuma. And the customer will show me around his shop. He'll tell me things that he probably wouldn't tell me otherwise if he knew my title. And frequently that about 3/4 of the way through the tour, he'll stop me and say, well, you never told me what you do at Akuma. And I'm the president. And then all of a sudden they're going, well, I take back all those things that I said. No, not at all. Our founder has a statement that we follow, is that the criticism of one is worth the praise of 100. And that's the statement after that I tell the customer after I kind of shock them with the fact that I'm running Akuma America.
Wow, that's excellent. The talking about good times and bad times, it seems that often in these times like what we're experiencing now, there's a explosion of innovation and learning and implementation of technologies that have been around for maybe a decade, but they just find their growth spurts during these downturns. What do you think drives that?
Well, necessity. If you looked at our company 9 months ago, and if you would have told me that 90% of my employees would be working from home, I would have probably have you thrown out of our building. And when COVID hit, we had a plan to teach everybody how to use Teams in Microsoft Teams, and in about 48 hours, we were using Teams without any education because we had to figure out a way to communicate in real time because we couldn't be in the office. The governor shut the state down, and I think what happens in a moment of crisis, and you can look at 9/11 and the security that's at airports today. In every crisis, there is innovation that happens, and ours, I think, is really centered around the acceleration of communication tools, Zoom, this type of environment. And it's going to be interesting to see. I believe that those technologies are going to take us into some more virtual capabilities of troubleshooting machines, finding ways to help customers through these communication tools. And I also think that if you look at a lot of the virtual IR, AR type activities, more remote activities are going to happen, and we're going to be forced as industry to grab a hold of those technologies and figure out how to help our customers on a more remote basis, at least for the next year to 2 years. I think we will be put in this environment that we are today.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, and I agree with you. The implications of what this will have as far as an impact, whether it's going to be 2 years or 3 years or 4 years before we come to a realization of how new business is going to be done.
Yeah.
With respect to one of the things you said there about automation, and its growth during these hard times. You've always been a really strong advocate for the digital thread in manufacturing. I think we talked just recently about your panel at IMTS 2018
yes.
with the guys from Making Chips. I thought that your explanation of what Industry 4.0 is and will be was pretty darn good. If you could just go back over that.
Yeah. Well, when I look at our industry, in my early career, I was heavily into process control, and a lot of the industry back then, they had traceability. They had to in food and medical, and I look at a lot of the machine tool shops that are out there today. The ability or the desire for them to connect has yet to be fully defined. That value proposition for the 20 to 30 machine shop owner has not been clearly articulated, the benefits to them. And when I look at what COVID has done for us, I think it will move these shop owners more into figuring out how to get more remote services and through connecting all these machines and start to understand what's happening on your shop floor for preventative maintenance, predictive maintenance, and really what are you producing, and understanding your cost drivers is one of the things that I believe is going to drive our industry into Industry 4.0 that we haven't seen before. And I think these moments of crisis, again, we use technology for communications, but I think that the digital push for information and big data is going to be there. And I think this pandemic is going to be one of the things that drive us to more of a digital communications of data. And I think there's other innovations that'll take place in the future that we may not fully understand yet.
I've heard a number of our people that on the automation side of the business saying that it's actually been a little bit easier to get the customer to focus on the whiz bang of automation through digital twin presentations via
Yes.
Zoom, because they're focused on the right thing instead of thinking about the next question they're going to ask.
Right.
Do you see that applying to your particular part of the business?
Yeah, I do. I think automation in itself is an easier sell than the Industry 4.0. I think people can take a look at putting a robot or automation, gantries, bar feeders, all those tools for automating your facility. They can draw a direct line from that automation to a payback, and and I think a lot of companies, and we've seen, we have experience with companies that start with automation, and as they take all of the busy work away from the machines and use automation, their next step, their next increment is to start connecting the machines and understanding what's happening on the plant floor. But my hypothesis would be that getting automation started in a plant is a whole lot easier to justify than buying a big package of software and trying to decipher all this big data.
So you see the integration and implementation of Industry 4.0 not being a sweeping change, but we want these incremental elements, sort of like the CNC control, paper, magnetic tape, diskette.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how long do you think that's going to take? I mean, do we need another pandemic or another recession to see it grow fast enough to be something that happens during our careers?
I think it will. I think COVID-19 will drive a lot of people to that next step. I think automation, because of the workforce, I think there needs to be some innovation in the security of the data. I still think that if you look out at blockchain encryption for manufacturing, there's been a lot of articles written about the ability to secure your IP. And I think there's still a whole lot of people that are concerned about having their IP visible in cloud environments. And I think some of the innovation is going to come in encryption that isn't really prevalent today in manufacturing.
Hmm. Well, you should know. I mean, it's been a good portion of your career is on this part of the
Right.
manufacturing technology, the interconnectivity and the implementation of a variety of different types of automation.
Right.
How does this Rebounding how does this mesh with that?
You broke up a little bit. You're talking about Partners and Think.
With experiments, innovation of automation and building connect with the customer stack spring.
Pat, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't. You're really garbled. You may want to try plugging your microphone in and out. Nope.
Still no?
Nope. I got you. We're
you
back.
got me?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay.
You were talking
Yeah,
about
okay.
Partners and Think.
Yes, I was saying that this expansion of automation, use of digital twins and the digital thread in manufacturing, how does that mesh up with your strategy with your Partners and Think?
Yeah, we continue to take our Partners and Think and evolve it to more and more of the people in the software space and in areas of data acquisition, along with our traditional partners. And I think to have a playground for technology, and that's really what Partners and Think is all about, is marrying different technologies to work in a PC-based environment. And if and if we as an organization can use that playground so people can take automation and, and vision systems and be able to have an environment where they can connect up to a machine tool. I think that having those tools available to these third parties will help us communicate how automation can help people, and I think it'll accelerate the use of automation. The easier we can make it for someone to plug in and play with automation, I think it's one of those things that is our responsibility to help our customers get to that next level.
And I'm going to throw a question in here from the audience because it fits so well with this particular part of our interview, and that is automation installation and operations getting more user friendly, a lot easier than it was, say, just even 5 years ago?
I would say yes. I mean, if you look at the tools that are available today, a good example is one of our distributors, Goscar Automation, has a product called Load and Go, and it's an HMI that sets up the machine, and it sets up the robot. You know, before you used to have a robot programmer to sit there and teach the points of the robot. Today, I see programming in the evolution of programming. Even I can program that machine, and I haven't touched a programming tool in so many years. But I actually programmed the loading system and robot to our lathe, and I didn't break anything.
I'm sure your staff appreciated that. You weren't doing that in front of a customer, were you?
Oh no, absolutely not.
Well, we've talked about automation being a very strong thread through your entire career. I know one of your other passions is about the value of a career in manufacturing. I've heard, seen a number of interviews, and that you've done that both in the press and in videotapes. What can you give us a quick synopsis about why manufacturing is a value added career?
Well, it ties back to if in manufacturing today, if we don't have a strong feeder system and into this industry, the health of any economy is really measured, in my mind, by the health of their manufacturing and machine tool businesses. And so to create a career in this industry and be successful is just one. It's not for the faint of heart, as you and I both know.
Right.
But it's extremely and people, the young talent that we've brought into this organization, find it extremely fulfilling to be in manufacturing and see how things are made. For the same reason you and I love this industry, we give young students, high school kids coming through our facility, in a curiosity to see how it's made. That's what we have to expose that next generation of manufacturing people to, is to teach them that passion that we have on how things are produced, and that hook gets set, and then we're good to go.
Well, there's so many of AMT members have the same kind of mindset and have been out there helping build programs to teach people. And I know I saw a picture just recently of an award you got a couple of years ago from Mayor Roberts, I think is his name. Yes. That was about the skill sets in manufacturing as well.
Yeah, we work with Piedmont Community College here, CPCC, and York Technical College, both programs where we have donated machines into their machining program. And that's really to create a feeder for us and our to really feed our application engineering and service technicians, and expose more and more people to what a CNC is. And it's not a dirty environment; it's a clean environment. And I believe that many of the machinists that we run across are artists caught in an engineering body. And they create these wonderful works of art. in my mind, and that's what we need to expose, and that's how we expose people to this.
Yeah, and we thank you so much for it, and it's an example that so many other people should be getting involved with, because I'm sure you would say that it's not just been a feeder program to the college, it's been a feeder program for you and for some of your customers as well.
Absolutely.
And so along that lines, you know Harry Mosier, I'm pretty sure.
I do.
Yeah, so you know his total cost of ownership and reshoring.
Right.
And I was talking to a friend in Missouri not too long ago, and he's believes in the reshoring. It's changed his business a bit to be more automation and less what they used to do.
That's right.
And the reason he was doing that is because he says if Harry's even half right, and we get 15 to 20% of what we import coming back to this country to be manufactured or in North America, what the heck we're going to do? We were at full employment and missing skilled people before this all started. If you tack that on top, how are we going to handle that?
Yeah, I look at it I'm scared for the same reasons, and that's why I believe if he's right, 15 to 20%, we had a labor shortage going into this whole COVID-19, and that's why automation is critical. I think a lot of the virtual tools are going to be critical so that we can take an application engineer, rather than fly him 6 hours to the West Coast. I can have him in the office and not lose 6 hours. He can touch 5, 10, 15 companies in a virtual way and help our customers get over the hump on application issues or service issues that they might be faced with. So I think there's the tools that have accelerated, along with automation, are going to help us bridge that gap that I think is going to happen in the Americas. Because I think it's a lot of stuff, is manufacturing will come back to the Americas, which means all of North and South America.
Well, we've got a question from the audience, and I encourage everyone in the audience, please send your questions in. We're having them moderated, and we'll fit them into the right portion of the interview. This one happens to fit right here. Question is whether you believe that manufacturing is going to see increased reshoring and nearshoring in the next 2 or 3 years, and the reasons why.
I'll take you answer this question all the time, so I'll take my shot at it. I think the major reason is that during COVID-19, we saw the globe expose itself to the supply chain issues that we never saw coming. And so if you look at the automotive industry and you look at a lot of the locomotive industries that brought a lot of parts in from China, when that faucet got shut off, it exposed a lot of companies that move their manufacturing to China and to Indonesia to now have to look at it and say, you know something, I'm going to restore, but I don't think they'll restore everything. But I think there's a good amount of reshoring that will take place just to protect their supply chain, nothing else.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's been our message from IMTS and IMTS Network. And I think you'll see it repeated numerous times through Spark presentations over the course of the next couple of years. With respect to the labor part of this issue, is there any good solution that we can turn around in 2 to 5 years?
On the labor side, I think it's more focused on how do we automate and how do we create tools to make it easier for the job shops and manufacturing to produce parts quicker. And I think that's going to be, you're going to have higher skilled people than you have today, possibly. But I think that the road to hiring enough people is not going to be solved in 2 to 3 years. I think it's incumbent on us in manufacturing to continue to train and to invest in education in your local markets.
Okay. Before I've got another question from the audience. Before I go to that, I don't want to leave this for just one more second. So, with the supply chain issue, to me, it seems that during the latter part of the 90s and almost all of the current century, people got complacent with respect to supply chain, and they didn't do due diligence with managing risks. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It was a mad rush to get low cost labor, and you look at the drug companies who are completely tied to China right now, and there's a whole activity trying to pull back some of the critical medications that we source from China. I think people went into it thinking that the global economy is impervious to any issues, and I think we've proven that we need to have a different strategy and more of a distributed manufacturing strategy.
Going through the question now from the audience here. Any tips for moving a shop from old school to 4.0? It's a small family-owned business, that's CNC shop, and they've been in business about 40 years. And they've made the transition to lean in 2008, and are finally dipping their toe into the paperless and digital world. They know it's something they need to do, just don't know how to get it done because it seems way too tough some days.
Yeah, and our organization has, and I think every builder of machine tools today has a strategy to be able to start pulling information off of machines, and it be depending on, as long as they're Akumas, and we can easily connect them because they're PC based. But I also tell you that there's ways to dip your toe in the water. There is open software that you can connect machines to and start pulling data off of. That's almost freeware. And to get your machines just connected and pulling data from them, and starting to understand and prioritize what is the important data that's going to run your business. Because if you turn that faucet on of data out of a CNC, the problem most companies have is that's too much data. They don't know what to do with it. And I'd go into it with a strategy and say, what's important to my company and to my organization, and what drives the business? What information from your plant floor, your manufacturing, drives your business? Before you start buying software and implementing and connecting machines, because that'll help you scope what you really want to get yourself into.
Excellent. Going back just a teeny bit to the supply chain, managing risks. Yep. There are a lot of other risks besides the supply chain. What do you think are some of the key risks that the manufacturers face that maybe is not getting as much attention as they probably should be given?
Beyond just supply chain, I think it's understanding your cost competitiveness on a global basis. The whole reason people went to China is because it costs less. And if you listen to Harry Mosier on the true cost of having manufacturing out of the United States, I think it's if you listen to him, you move it back here, you have to understand how you're going to compete in a global environment. And I think sometimes that complacency that we have, and I think the manufacturers have to realize that a U.S. manufacturer is not going to be able to compete with a government-run manufacturing industry. And so I look at it and say we need as an industry to understand also that you're going to pay a little bit more for product that you can source in the U.S., but you have a stable supply chain.
Awesome. With all the risks that are out there to manage, and the challenges we currently have with the health issues,
right?
What would you say that manufacturers need to focus on now? Top three, ranking 1, 2, 3.
When the pandemic hit, we threw our strategic plan out the window, and we said, okay, we're going to focus on 3 things. And it's at that time it was cash management, taking care of our distributor channel, and our employees. And I think for the next year, I think we need as an industry and manufacturing to really focus on how do we become more efficient and more intentional? And when I say intentional, it's what are we going to do as an industry to make sure that we lead the recovery in the United States? Look back in 2008 and 9, manufacturing led the recovery. I believe that we'll do the same here, but it's got to be intentional. We just can't hope and wish it to happen. And I'm challenging our organization, our distributors, and even our customers of how do we look critically at our business and then become very intentional on the next 3 to 4 things that we need to do to shore up the things that we control. And that's going to be different for a company. A 40-man shop or a 20-man shop, their key drivers are going to be different. And that's why it's really important. My drivers are going to be much different than a shop owner's challenges. But if we become intentional about what we do, that's critical to our business. And then with a focus on how do we lead the recovery, I think we will lead that recovery.
And when you say we, I assume you mean manufacturing and manufacturing technology specifically?
Yeah. We have fun with our competitors and everything else, but in the end, it's our industry. It's us trying to help manufacturing with our technology to become more efficient, more reliable, and more repeatable. And so it's incumbent on all my compadres in this industry to help manufacturing, and that's a collective we, not just a group. It's a collective we.
Mm-hmm. So playing the role of sort of Johnny Carson's Karnak now, looking out 3 to 5 years, what do you see the landscape for manufacturing as a whole?
I think we touched on several of those, Pat. But I look out over manufacturing. I believe that, as we've talked, automation is going to be critical. Connecting their machines and starting to pull critical data off of it. I think with that critical data comes preventative and in predictive maintenance, and so that we can keep spindles running and you can keep manufacturing running. I think AI is starting to blow up in our industry. We're just on the precipice of really implementing artificial intelligence in manufacturing. And so when I look out over the horizon, I think you'll see more and more of those advanced technologies working their way into our industry. And again, the security, I think, is going to be one of those things that'll evolve and make it much more of an environment that manufacturers can trust putting their IP up into a virtual environment.
I couldn't agree more. Now, you've built a pretty darn good team there. I mean, you were handed a fairly nice car to drive by Larry, but it's grown with the changes that we've seen, not only in competition, but with the technologies. So in building your team, what are some of the key traits you're looking for, people that come in to help in the marketing and in the production and engineering and sales?
Yeah. One of the key things that we look for, and it's part of our value system, is leading with a servant heart. I think in our industry, which is really focused around product and service, you sell the first machine. If you don't service it, you don't sell anymore. So it's really leading with a servant heart. But I also look for people that are willing to listen, and people that are intentional of what they do every day. Not only are they organized, they have a to-do list, they have a to-be list, and of how they want to be in the marketplace and in the business, and how they're going to interact with their teammates. And
so if you were going to reach out and coach somebody that's just about to start engineering at Michigan State, right, what would you say to him or her?
One, learn to listen. 2, find the smartest people in the room and associate yourself with them. All too many leaders are frightened of people that are greater than themselves. And my counsel to anybody is surround yourself with some of the brightest people you can find, because not only will you learn and you will improve your skill sets, but you'll raise the whole water level of the organization. So I would tell them, make sure that you're seeking those really smart people out. And lastly, I would make sure that I would tell them that when you get to be a manager or an executive or whatever else, give people the permission to speak freely. Because it all too often, as we rise up in the executive ranks of an organization, the filters of information start to narrow down quite a bit. And so having the ability to tell your employees or the people around you, you have my permission to speak freely, and then not take them off at the knees, which takes a lot of discipline at times. And but having people around you, make sure they're candid and open with you. Those are the things that, as you advance through your career, if you live to those, I think you're going to be extremely successful.
I think that's fantastic. And it sounds a little bit like what my grandfather used to say about you always got to have the best people around you, or you won't get better.
That's right.
It doesn't matter whether you're talking about sports or business or learning. Right. We have a question from the audience. Are there specific industries that you see rebounding faster in this downturn than others?
The one that we see a whole lot of excitement in is the firearms industry. I don't know if anybody's ever been in. I know here in North and South Carolina, you go into a gun store and they don't have any guns at all, and so the firearm industry has absolutely gone crazy. So that's one. And then I look at, I think, the automotives, some of the things that you talked about during IMTS Network. I think we'll see the automotive come back. And we're seeing a little bit of the Caterpillars, John Deere's, the people in the construction equipment because of all the housing starts. Those areas are starting to come back. I think that it'll be a while till aerospace comes back. And at below $40 a barrel, the oil companies aren't going to make money, and they're not going to make any investments.
Yeah, you did a pretty nice review right there. But a fun fact: the firearms industry has sold more through August than they sold in all of 2019. So there's an industry that's going to blow the doors off their annual number. And there's some other, some of the automation places, materials handling. Yeah. And you're right. Automobile industries, more orders from them in June and July this year than we had from the automobile industry in 2019. So yeah. I think you put a pretty nice little plate there together for people about what's looking good.
I did pay attention to you last week.
Well, now if I could get you to talk to my wife, But it's going to be an interesting dynamic coming out of this, and I think that your perspective about where we're going to be 5 years from now is true, and I think great advice with respect to the college grad going in to look at a career in manufacturing. I hope that it's as exciting for them as it's been, I think, for you, and certainly I've enjoyed it. I've had a couple times opportunities to leave, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. It's a great career. I agree with you.
It is.
Let me just check see if there are any questions from the any other final words of wisdom.
I don't know if it's wisdom. I think it's age more than wisdom, and seen a whole lot of things. I look at COVID-19 as a natural disaster. More than anything else, because if you listen to companies like forecasting economists like ITR and others, if you look at the economy in general, savings are up. There's money in the marketplace, so the underpinning, the foundation of our economy is strong, and you guys talked about that again in Network, and so what I look for is how do you as an organization, what did we learn from COVID-19? And we've got a task force set up, and we're collecting all of the learnings, both bad and good, the mistakes we made and the things that we did well. And then we're going to reset ourselves probably in the January timeframe of redo some of the strategies that we had thrown out the window because they don't apply today. And so going through that process of finding the nuggets of good things that happen out of COVID-19, I think all of us need to do that and then reset ourselves for the future.
Yeah, I agree. I was in a discussion of similar nature, and one of the questions that was put out there was, well, when do we get back to the new normal? and the discussion went to, why would you get back to because you've paid so much in personal pride and cost and revenue and people's lives you've had an impact. Why would you take all this disruption and go back to where you were? It's an opportunity to make changes like what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
So throw the strategic plan out, start over.
Right.
We've got another question from the audience, Jim, so you're not off the hook yet.
All right.
It's kind of a little bit convoluted, but apparently you've written a love letter to the distribution network.
Yeah. There is some movement in the marketplace on people on the go-to-market strategy. And I wrote a letter to the marketplace, like an open letter, describing our relationship with distribution. And if you, again, going back to our mission statement.
Well, it looks like we may have lost Jim for a second. Let's give him a couple of seconds. Here we go. There we go.
So I wrote this letter, open letter to the marketplace, talking about how we have had distribution in place for over 30 years. And the relationship between us and our distributors, and having a distributor local in the marketplace. People you go to church with, people your kids play baseball and football with, are in the local market. And this love letter was really telling the market that we fully believe in distribution, and we believe it's the best mechanism to drive our mission statement of passionately pursuing a customer for life. They're an integral part of our success, and they've been with us for 3 decades and more. And so when you have that connection, a lot of our customers, there's a blurred line between my staff and the distributors, the owner's staff. And that's really a true testament. And that's what that letter was about, just telling the marketplace how much we love our distributor network.
Well, hey, I couldn't agree with you, and it certainly has worked well for you. Yep. I don't see any more questions in the queue. Any final word before we thank our audience?
No, I appreciate your time, Pat, and I appreciate all the work AMT has put together with Network and Spark. You guys are doing a great job getting the word out in a very difficult environment that we're in, and it's appreciated by everyone on our staff.
And we couldn't do it without you guys. I mean, both members and those exhibitors who aren't members have been unbelievably supportive during these times, and I'm looking forward to seeing how things are going. And I have to say, I was through your virtual booth late last week, and I thought it was very nice. And then I would say to anyone, should stop by and at least say hello to Jim at the podium there as you walk into the booth.
Yeah, our team did a fabulous job in a very short order to pull together that virtual environment, and for us, that's just the beginning, Pat. We believe that this whole virtual environment is going to be an accelerator of technology to be able to experience machines and technology in a virtual way. And we're going to continue to expand and invest in that so that customers can actually go in and look at a machine 360, spin it around, see demonstrations of how it cuts, and do that research like you would do to buy a bike for your son or daughter. Do the same thing in a virtual environment to try to whittle down the machines that you need for your facility.
Well, again, thank you. And to all of you that tuned in this morning, we appreciate it and look forward to seeing you the next time we bring Leadership Viewpoint with Rick Simons of Cardinal Machinery. And until then, Have a great couple of weeks, and hopefully knock down a little bit more business.
All right.
Take
Thank
care,
you very
Jim.
much, everybody.